If you're looking to build Jenova on a budget, this video's for you. Hello everybody and welcome back into the fort. My name is Tyler Saves Ya Bucks and I am here to talk about Jenova, Ancient Calamity. Let's get right into it for 14 cards under $14 that you can pick up to start a brand new Jenova deck. But we need to take a look at the commander first before we get started today. Jenova Ancient Calamity is 4 mana in Golgari, 1/5 alien. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a number of 1/1 counters equal to Jenova's power on up to one other target creature. That creature becomes a mutant in addition to its other types, and then whenever a mutant you control dies during your turn, you draw cards equal to its power. This deck and this list, I'm going to be focusing on stuff that is already a mutant at the start of the list, and then some payoff sacrifice cards at the end of the list. Part of that is the fact that you do want to be able to put some big creatures in this deck and turn them into mutants, but it's also kind of icing on the cake if you already have some mutant creatures in the list. That way, whenever they happen to die, even if you don't put that counter with Jenova on combat onto one of them, you're going to be drawing cards on your turn. And that can happen multiple times if you have more mutants in the deck. So let's take a look at the first one on the list today, Rampaging Yagwai. This is X green, green, green for a 2/2 bear mutant, vigilance, trample. When it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield with X/1/1 counters on it, and when it enters, destroy any number of target artifacts and or enchantments with total mana value X or less. So if X is 4, you can blow up 2 signets or Soul Ring and a Ristic Study or something like that. Why I like this and leading off in the list is the fact that it is good early game. It comes down the turn before Jenova if you need it for just a 2/2, but also late game, it's a little bit of a board wipe that can just ruin somebody's whole plan for their deck while also making you a very big mutant that can then attack or you sacrifice for value and draw a whole bunch of cards. Now, as we move on through this list with Lily Bowen, Raging Grandma, you're going to see a few Fallout cards. There's a lot of mutants in that list, and who knew Jenova and from Final Fantasy VII and Fallout would synergize so well. This is 4 mana for a 0/0 mutant warrior with vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, it gets 2 1/1 counters, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of 1/1 counters on Lily Bowen if its power is 16 or less. Otherwise, remove all but 1 counter from it. Then you gain 1 life for each 1/1 counter removed this way. If you do still want to put that counter from Jenova onto Lily, then when it doubles those counters, it's going to double even faster and get higher and higher and higher. So in this deck, you're doing a lot of all-in plays. And you might just want to let this trigger go off and gain a bunch of life, but also it naturally grows counters every single turn, and then you can cash it in later. Say it has to be below 16, say it gets to 14 counters for Lily, and then you sacrifice it. That's draw 14 cards. I think that's pretty good if you ask me. Moving on to another Fallout card, Watchful Rad Stag. This is 3 mana for a 2/2 with Evolve. I'll read that in a second. Whenever Watchful Rad Stag evolves, create a token that's a copy of it. Evolving is when a creature enters the battlefield under your control. If it has power or toughness greater than this creature, you put a 1/1 counter on the Watchful Rad Stag. What's cool about this is the fact that we talked about 2 creatures so far that went tall. This is a way to go wide. They also all have evolve. So if you put 1 down and then you cast something bigger, or even say you cast Jenova that has bigger toughness, all of a sudden this evolves. Now you have 2. And then you cast another one. Now you have 4, and then so on and so forth. And what's good about this is the fact that they're 2 power at their base. And if you happen to have 4, 6, 7, no, maybe not 7, because whatever. If you have a lot of them, when you attack, all of a sudden, if they just happen to go through, that's gravy. You're hitting people, but also if they die, you're drawing at least 2 cards per each one that dies on your turn. I like this inclusion a lot, especially because that mana cost is right under Jenova. Lumbering Mega Sloth. Mana cost a little bit higher, but there's help here. It is 10 green for an 8/8 Sloth Mutant. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each counter among players and permanents. It has trample and it enters tapped. What's really cool about this card in the list is we've talked about so many ways to put counters on things. Your commander puts counters on things, but it also checks for counters on anybody and anything else across the table. If someone else is playing a counters deck, that is going to help you cast the Lumbering Mega Sloth. And like I said, we'll be talking hopefully, if I can talk, we'll be talking about some sacrifice synergies later in the list. And this is a very good one to sacrifice, since at, once again, base level, it's an 8/8 that you can cast for possibly 2 and then sacrifice it right away, draw 8 and get some benefits from there. Your Sign Monstrosity is 3 mana for a bear mutant, 3/3 with trample. At the beginning of combat on your turn, mill a card and choose an opponent at random. This creature attacks that player this combat if able. Until end of turn, it also gains indestructible and +1/+1 for each card type among cards in your graveyard. This is not from Fallout. This is from, I believe, one of the Duskborn Commander sets or decks. I really like this just because, again, it's that 3 mana. It's right under where Jenova will be. It has trample. It's a good attacker. Yes, it gains indestructible, so it probably won't be dying in combat just because of the fact that, you know, sometimes you do want to just send something into the red zone, and if it dies, you draw cards. I just like the fact that as the game goes on, it has a different way other than counters to build its power more and more. And then you can cash it in at the end of combat after you just dealt a bunch of damage and then sacrifice it to draw a whole bunch of cards. And by the way, most of these cards we're talking about right now are under $1, about 50 cents or so. I'll be saying prices later on because some of the sacrifice outlets are a little more expensive for the under $14 budget. Feral Ghoul is next. We're back at Fallout. This is 3 mana for a 2/2 zombie mutant with menace. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a 1/1 counter on Feral Ghoul. And when Feral Ghoul dies, each opponent gets a number of rad counters equal to its power. So rad counters, I'm not even going to go into it too much right now, but when people have rad counters, they mill and then they lose life for each non-land permanent they mill. So it is, if people's life totals are low, they might get a little bit concerned about this. But what I like about Feral Ghoul in this deck is you are going to be sacrificing creatures, and this just grows from you doing that. And then by the time you want to sacrifice it, it should be a much higher power, and you'll be drawing a whole bunch of cards once it's the Feral Ghoul's turn to bite the dust as well. And then closing out the list for our mutants as it stands, Evolution Witness, one of the most normal looking mutants we're talking about today, 3 mana, 2/1 Elf Shaman Mutant. It has Adapt 2 for 2 mana. I don't know if I've ever adapted a creature in my life. You can pay 2 if this creature has no 1/1 counters on it, put 2 counters on it. And then whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on Evolution Witness, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Very, very strong in this deck, especially because your commander can put a counter on this. I know I talked about the fact that you do want to possibly have Jenova target something else to turn it into a mutant or whatever, but the fact that, say you sacrifice the Feral Ghoul, you can do so a little bit more with reckless abandon when you know that you have a creature here that can just pull things back from your graveyard. You sacrifice the Ghoul, give a bunch of people rad counters, draw a bunch of cards, and then move to combat and have Jenova just throw a counter on this, and you just get that Ghoul right back. Move to your second main, cast it again. It's just going to help be a little bit of an engine to keep you playing with the cards that are working for you in that game right there. And now we're looking at some sacrifice outlets. Like I said, I will be saying general prices for these because they are good. I'll say that, but not super crazy like an altar that's $10, $15, $20, $30. If you have those, put them in this deck. White of the Reliquary is a card I love a lot. It is a black and a green for a 2/2 Zombie Knight. Vigilance. It gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard, and then you can tap to sacrifice another creature, search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. This is about $225, $275 right now, dollars. I love this card a lot. I have it in my Nethroi deck, which is also kind of a graveyard deck. And what I love about it is it's just out there. It sets you up early game, and then you can start ramping any land in your deck. And the fact that it also is able to grow based off of cards in your graveyard, that's a way to then throw a counter on this if this wants to bite the dust at some point too. Turn it into a mutant and draw more cards. It kind of helps on both axes of the game. All right, next card that's right here. I don't play Warhammer, so I'm going to give it a shot. It's a Luminor Siraz. I'm going to just call it a Luminor. It's 3 mana for a 3/3 Necron. You can tap to sacrifice another creature, add an amount of black to equal to the sacrificed creature's mana value. This is around $350 in terms of buying. One of the more expensive cards on the list, but I think you can tell why. By the way, this was originally an article I did for EDH Rec. You can read the original right here for more explanation on a lot of these cards. In the article, I specify Lumbering Megasloth, which again has that 12 mana value. Super magical Christmas land, but it is possible in this deck to sacrifice that, draw 8 with Jenova, and then make 12 black mana to cast some of those cards you just got. It's a very, very good card in the deck. And again, it's on a creature, so it can be turned into a mutant and then bite the dust and draw you cards. Flare of Cultivation. This is one of the free spells that we got in Modern Horizons 3, I believe. This is 1 green. You may sacrifice a non-token green creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Search your library for up to 2 basic lands. Reveal those cards, put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle. Why this is so great is because it's just like a very played card in the format. Cultivate you have to pay 1 green more in terms of Flare of Cultivation, but this is an option to just sacrifice something and then it ramps you a little bit. For free, that is pretty nice, especially since you might want to do this for free, get rid of one of your creatures, draw a bunch of cards, and still have a bunch of mana untapped. Maybe you didn't have a land drop, now you do. It's just a very clean card, and for free, being possibly able to cast it for free. The fact that it's only, I'm seeing right here on TCG, it's 116. That's not too bad for one of the free spells. So maybe pick one up. Actually, I should probably pick one up now that I'm thinking about it. Cultist of the Absolute. This is 1 black for a legendary enchantment background. Commander creatures you own get +3/+3, have flying, death touch, ward, pay 3 life, and at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. In this list, I didn't do too many cards that buffed Jenova's power, but Jenova does give counters equal to the power, and you can put some more cards that will ensure that you put more counters on one creature. I just think if you spread it out a little bit more with more mutants and then specific ones that you want to turn into a mutant that already have big power, that's kind of the direction I wanted to go in with this list. But why Cultist of the Absolute is great for this deck is because of the fact that it gives a bunch of nice keywords. It gives ward, and it is a little bit of a sacrifice outlet on top of giving +3 power. Now, you might get in a weird situation where you don't want to sacrifice any of your stuff, but I do think in this deck, with how much card draw you have, you'll be going into more and more threats that you can build up, and then on your upkeep, get rid of one, draw a whole bunch of cards. I like this card a lot. It's only 30 cents. Deadly Brew, another one that's like 25 cents. It is a green and a black for a sorcery. Each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker of their choice. If you sacrificed a permanent this way, you may return another permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. It's a really good disruption piece. The fact that everybody has to sacrifice something. Sure, someone might not lose the biggest thing, but somebody might lose their best thing because it's their only creature. all while you're sacrificing something you already want to sacrifice and then getting something else back into your hand. It's a great disruption and setting you up for the future type of card for 2 mana and for 25 cents. Demigoth Titan. Of course, I had to bring this up because it's just a crazy card. It is 4 hybrid Golgari mana, and it is a 11/10 demon. Whenever it attacks or blocks, sacrifice a creature. What's interesting about this is, of course, you're going to want Jenova to throw a counter on it so that becomes a mutant. And then you can just sacrifice it to one of the other things I've talked about before, or try and wait until it gets to your turn. And if it is still around and you need a way for it to get into the graveyard, if it attacks, it has that ability to sacrifice a creature. You can sacrifice itself too. So if you're in just a pickle, you have this and Jenova out and you're able to attack, this would be the thing I would say to send into combat, thus giving you an option to sacrifice itself and draw 12 cards or however many more counters you want to put on this thing. So Demigoth Titan, and it's only 70 cents. I love this card. The last card on the list is the Gitrog Ravenous Ride. When I first saw Jenova, I went right back in my mind about Gitrog Ravenous Ride. I did one of my first Pillow 14s for this channel on this creature. You can watch, you can watch right there, last year. And it's very similar, but has a few differences. Let's get into it. It is 5 mana Golgari. It is a 6/5 frog horror mount. Trample, haste. Whenever the Gitrog Ravenous Ride deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice a creature that saddled it this turn. Pause right there. Saddle. So this has saddle 1, basically like crew for vehicles. You tap a creature with power 1 or greater at sorcery speed, and then it's saddling this creature, which gives it an extra bonus, and that is this bonus. So again, when it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice the creature that saddled it this turn. If you do, draw X cards, then put up to X lands from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So Demigoth Titan, we just talked about it, 11 power. You would draw 11 cards and possibly put up to 11 lands onto play. When I first thought of these two, I really did think, oh, it would be crazy. You sacrifice that creature, and then when you sacrifice that creature, you draw the cards with Jenova, and then you can put and then you draw the cards with Gitrog, and then you put all the lands that you drew from both of those onto play. I believe it doesn't really work like that because the Gitrog's ability all happens in one go. You sacrifice a creature, draw the cards, put the lands onto play, and then Jenova will see that that creature died if it's a mutant, and then you'll draw cards equal to its power again. Even though that's not, the biggest drawback, it is still just something to note. At the same time, if you're drawing 5 cards, putting up to 5 lands into play, and then drawing 5 more cards, if something with 5 or more power saddled Gitrog, it's a really good combo. And the fact that the Gitrog can come out the turn after Jenova, it's something you can do right away because somehow the Gitrog has haste. I don't know what happened on Thunder Junction. It is a quick little big frog. So there you go, 14 cards for under $14 you can pick up to start your own Jenova deck. Let me know in the comments what you would put in the 99 for this. If people are coming to build this deck, let's fill up the comments with a bunch of suggestions so people can go check it out and build out a really cool community-driven deck right here in the Pillow Fort. So I will see you guys next time, either on EDH Rec or here on the channel in the Fort. Goodbye.